Hello and welcome to this, what is going to be a really super interesting interview with Dr. Tom Lonsdale, who at the moment is over in the UK with us, but usually resides in Australia. And some of you have met Tom or seen interviews with Tom with me before. So my name's Caroline and I run a big event in the UK connected to holistic and natural vet care. It's usually in the spring and it's called the Natural Dog Expo. So you're very welcome to come next year, which is 2025, which is Sunday, the 27th of April. But in the meantime, we have work to do. Now, at both my previous events, the big topic that all the vets were asked who were sitting on the speaker panel and had been talking to you all throughout the day was, what can we do as guardians to support the cause of fresh and natural pet food? And Tom today has something that we can get involved in. We can really actively make a difference here. And I'm really excited to bring this to you. So Tom, hello.
Hello. So good to be here. Yes, well, it's marvelous to be talking with you, and indirectly now we're going to be talking to the government, because we've got the government's attention already. There's this organization called the Competition and Markets Authority, and they've been allocated the task of investigating the veterinary services market. But I think, as with so many bureaucracies, they get it wrong. Their whole approach is wrong, but they're steaming ahead. All systems go in the wrong direction. That's terribly disheartening. So we've got to grab their attention again, get them to think long and hard about the mistakes they're making, and retract what they've started with and start again.
Okay, Tom, as I understood it, the CMA investigative report was looking at pricing, so the amount that guardians are expected to pay for different veterinary drugs, some of which were, for instance, one that I know of is that the human version of exactly the same drug is on prescription or even sold much, much cheaper than we're paying as guardians when we're getting the same drug for our dogs. So that kind of thing I do understand and feel is probably quite needed. But I'm wondering if what you're discussing is something that they've missed out. You know, it's like they've overlooked this huge other.
Very much so. They're focusing on the detail without seeing the big picture. Right. And it's the big picture which is the vital thing. There should be no need for these drugs in the first place. So quibbling over a few extra pounds or pence that could be saved by getting them online really distracts from the central issue, uses up bandwidth, and adds further levels of complexity and potential problems to occur. For instance, buying drugs on the internet, right? Well, the scope for error then to get the doses wrong, and the duration of treatment wrong, and on and on and on. So this will be something of a false crutch, even if and supposing they introduce that. Oftentimes, if and when treatment is necessary, it's better that the drug be presented there and then. And if that is subsidizing the vet on the case, well, so be it. He or she has got to earn a living somehow. And, you know, if you can't charge for the services, then you can charge for the products and so on. So I'm not totally against veterinary services and veterinary products, not at all. But I just want the whole thing to be refined down to the fact that only genuinely sick animals or injured animals need to be treated by the vet. We shouldn't be in the business of engaging in the mass poisoning of these modified wolves and modified desert predators. We should not. They're already suffering disadvantage by virtue of their genetic mutation, with long snouts or push faces or elongated spines and all of those problems. They've got problems enough starting. Yeah. And then to insist that they need to survive on ultra processed junk at every meal of it on every day of the rest of their miserable lives is, to my way of thinking, just terribly unfair. So for the government then to be concentrating on the price of prescriptions but missing the big picture is an abomination.
Okay.
I've got a PowerPoint presentation. If we were to go through that, hopefully I'll be able to draw out salient points, and at the finish, if some clarification is necessary, well, why don't we do that too?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's start that.
All right. Okay. Now, providing my mastery of the technology is okay, I'll click on that. And then I will click on this, and lo and behold, can you see me?
Can't see the presentation just yet.
No. Okay. So I've got to go back out of here, come back to you briefly, share the screen, and then
so for those that are wondering what it is that you might be able to do once we've seen Tom's presentation, there is an opportunity, a window of time still for us as guardians to contact the CMA and to discuss this with them. I think the window ends early next week, so I think we've got a few days. We've got till Tuesday, possibly. Is it the beginning of August it ends? I think it might be. So we've still got Monday the 29th of July, Tuesday the 30th. So you should have until maybe the end of next week. Tom will probably tell us more, to talk to the CMA and give them your opinions and hopefully point them in the direction of this bigger picture that Tom's talking about. And we've got a link for you to do that as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now you just saved me, because of course I was fiddling. And
that's brilliant.
There you go. Okay, we're up and running. Thank you, people. So this is the Competition and Markets Authority barking up the wrong tree, as I earlier said. And there we are. I went on artificial intelligence site, and lo and behold, I just keyed in dogs barking up a tree, and that's what we get. That's what they're up to. They're conducting a market investigation into veterinary services for household pets. They're assuming there is a market. In fact, it could be seen as a religious cult. It could be seen as the mafia running a protection racket, but they've chosen to call it a market. It's a very distorted market that they're investigating, but they're ignoring that. They're ignoring the fact that the veterinary market is conducted in what might be known as a bubble economy. What's a bubble economy? Well, there was one for tulip bulbs way back when the price of tulips shot up to being tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars per bulb. Well, obviously that was preposterous, and when the bubble burst, the whole thing collapsed. You have other housing bubbles, housing market bubbles, when artificial conditions set up a situation where the prices are way too high, and when the bubble bursts, it collapses. That, I say, is what needs to happen with the veterinary market, because it's a bubble economy dependent on the mass poisoning of the pets. And then the vets going through the motions of pretending to fix them when in fact they never do, because of course the animals, poor animals, are constantly being poisoned. What do I mean by poison? Poison is something which impairs health or brings about premature death. That's what happens with the junk pet food. Excuse me. So all jubilant and full of themselves, the CMA say they're going to press ahead with a full investigation. Their preliminary investigation elicited 56,000 responses. So there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of angst out there amongst the pet owning community that things aren't right with veterinary services. But alas, most people are blinkered and facing in the wrong direction. They're interested in how cheap they can get veterinary services and where they can get them and so on. This inquiry is about trying to provide cheaper, more closer veterinary services. That is a mistake. That is a big mistake, because that effectively gives a free pass to the vets and the junk pet foods and the fake animal welfare groups that are also in the pay to carry on doing what they're doing. Our job is to arrest that development down the wrong path and get them to focus on the health and well-being of the animals. And if they do that, then the need for veterinary services will plummet. And all these other problems about price and proximity and so on will start to dissipate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a bureaucracy, so they've got bureaucratic conditions that they need to fulfill, and they need to say what their terms of reference are. There's quite a number of terms, but I've highlighted a couple of things here. An investigation into the supply in the United Kingdom, UK, people, yeah, that's where it's located, of veterinary services for household pets. The CMA has reasonable grounds to suspect that a feature or a combination of features of the market for the supply of those goods and services in the UK prevents, restricts, or distorts competition. The big thing that seems to have triggered their thought process is that these big conglomerates, excuse me, and you probably know Vet Partners and Anicura and some of these other big chains, veterinary chains, are now starting to dominate the market. And as with any large organizations, they manipulate the market. And so that seems to be the main concern of these people.
Mm-hmm.
Alas, though, pets and people are betrayed because vets are selling services, and that, let's face it, they probably are selling them to too great a price and setting the terms and conditions and not necessarily helping the consumers. But no one is selling prevention. It's prevention we need for these animals. That's what they want. If they could speak, that's what they would tell us they're desperate for. Mm. Stop tormenting me. Stop poisoning me, they try to say. But they're limited. They're gagged. How terrible. But no vet is selling advice to feed raw meaty bones on a regular basis and helping the people to carry that activity out. None, except maybe Dr. May Yam down in New South Wales, Australia. And definitely no one is giving away that preventative advice. And that's what's needed. So points 2 and 3 are what's needed for the benefit of our animals and also for the consumers. We shouldn't be selling bogus goods and services in a bubble economy, when in fact, if we confront the reality that the animals shouldn't be sick in the first place, then that economy will just, well, it won't disappear, but it'll shrink considerably. In a capitalist economy, it's very difficult to find people who will sell options that pull the rug from under their commercial enterprise. So we've trusted vets to do both things. They've ignored the prevention thing. In fact, they've disparaged it. They've said it's of no consequence and that raw meaty bones are not the miracle cure and prevention. Well, I've got news for you. They are. In nature, raw meaty bones are the miracle cure and prevention of so many diseases. That's why the dogs spend hours upon hours gnawing at dry old bones, in fact, because it has such a wonderful preventative effect. So that's where we should be putting our emphasis. When I was in practice, I used to give away this information. Couldn't sell it because nobody came to me wanting to buy it. That's the trouble with this veterinary market as it now is. People are so used to buying services, they've got no idea that they should be buying preventative advice. So somebody would come to me with a dog with a sore paw. I would say, fine, I can fix that. Take 10 or 15 minutes to explain how. I would then spend best part of 45 minutes explaining why the dog hasn't told you, Mrs. or Mr. Pet Owner, but it's desperate to have a proper diet. and have these bad teeth sorted out. That was the sort of thing that used to motivate us. We couldn't sell that advice because we weren't asked for it. So we gave it away. Having given that advice to people, their animal would pick up their bed and walk, be happy ever after, and we would seldom need to see them again. So, but anyway, back to the CMA, because that's why we're here, gathered to discuss what they're up to. And this is the list of things that they're interested in helping pet owners to decide, and looking further than the closest vet. So they're thinking pet owners who've been hitherto dumbed down and made stupid are suddenly going to know how to distinguish between where the price is cheaper and or you get more for your money. They're thinking that you need to consider who's the ownership of the practice, the size of the facilities, payment plans out of our service. Can you see we're going further away from the central issue that's of consequence for the cats and dogs? Let's have a look at their short video here.
Top tips for pet owners. Look further than the closest vet. Research shows that lots of us choose a vet based simply on how close it is to where we live. It might feel convenient, but fees and services do differ between practices, so check to be sure it's the right one for you. Compare at least 3 vets in your area. Check their recurring costs for consultations, prescriptions, and annual vaccinations. These can add up over time. Also, check their opening hours and what sort of out-of-hours service they offer, and at what price. Don't want to be surprised in an emergency. For more information, visit gov.uk/vet tips. Brought to you by the Competition and Markets Authority.
So there we are. They're very earnest and very filled with honest endeavour, but the wrong focus. And then when it comes to treatment and services, let's watch their video about that as well.
Top tips for pet owners. Ask if there are other treatment options. Getting a treatment that works for you and your pet is what matters most. It's important that you understand why your vet has recommended a particular treatment or test. If you're not sure about a treatment or you're worried about the cost, speak to your vet. There could be cheaper care options available or an option to undertake the treatment in stages. For more information, visit gov.uk/vet tips. Brought to you by the Competition and Markets Authority.
Well, I say madness. Yeah, how are pet owners to know what the treatment options are if they're not provided with them alongside the preventative options, which should have preceded all of this? Not going to happen, because the people are making money out of treatment. The owners tend to think that if they buy a treatment, they'll get some benefit. Little do they realize that they've been duped all along. Regardless, after the CMA is finished, the pet owners are going to be left in the queue, still queuing at the door of the veterinary hospital where the vet recommends and sells poisonous junk. That scenario is not going to change. So, folks, anybody wishing to comment and let the CMA know their thoughts on this matter, then you can go to the issues statement. It's going to be up on our website, where you can read the entire issue statement. And you've got until the 30th of July to make comment and go to that email address that's listed there. If after the 30th of July you're reading this and hearing this for the first time, don't worry. I suspect that you can still make a submission to those folks, because if it's a pertinent submission from your own experience of life with poisoned pets, with vets who got cloth ears and won't listen, then I think you'll still be in a position to send them a reminder email, let them know the reality. Again, it's not up yet, but hopefully it will be by tomorrow. my comment to them, and I've made 11 points by way of introduction to it. There's about 60 pages of their issue statement. And here's an example of the sort of things that I've been writing to them and the sort of things that you can write to them as well. So starting at the top, I allege that small animal veterinary services are provided in a bubble economy. Relentless junk pet food advertising encourages people to obtain modified wolves and specialist predators and then feed those animals a relentless junk food diet. A vast population of diet-affected pets then need inordinate amounts of expensive veterinary attention. And that's where the problem starts. And that's where we should address the main problem. So instead of protecting pets and pet owners, they're protecting the pet food fraud that exploits the situation with massive over-servicing on the part of the vets. So the CMA, I've tried to engage with them, and you can see my correspondence with them where they just tried to shut me up and go on their merry way. So if they don't consider what underpins the need for veterinary services, then they're bound to get the answers wrong. Now, we've probably got a few months in which to get this all sorted out, but if people make application to the CMA, tell them their thoughts. Don't be one of the 56,000 who just want to bleat and complain about the cost of prescriptions, because that, I'm afraid, is a distraction, is a trivialization of what we really need to be doing if we want to protect the good health of our pet carnivores. And currently, that is not happening within the bubble economy market that we've now got. So you can find on my website an open letter to the Competition and Markets Authority. That's the heading, and you can see the link at the bottom there. Click on there and you can read more about this whole debacle that is happening in our name. They've devoted a lot of effort to this. They've got a bureaucracy all powered up and raring to go. They've obviously allocated a budget to do this thing, and they think that they're going to provide an improved so-called market. No, they're not. They're in fact going to be propping up the existing corrupt market that depends on the mass poisoning of pets. So let me just say that in all of my submissions, I say it's illegal. It's illegal to be cruel to one single animal, never mind to every animal in the UK. It's illegal and it's a criminal activity to defraud anybody by selling bogus treatments and services that are not suitable for purpose. And indeed, I think that these big corporations and the veterinary authorities should find themselves in the court answering for their crimes. Well, Caroline, why don't we have a chat about this? So I'll now end the little presentation, and thanks very much for watching. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. Just wondering whether it will go back to just us, or you can leave that there if you want. It's up to you.
Can I? Why don't I click?
That may, you'll have to press
stop the share. Is that what I do?
That's what you'll need.
There. How
Okay.
about that? Hello again. Well.
Yeah, so first thoughts, I wonder who has commented already in terms of perhaps even the Raw Feeding Veterinary Society. They may have sent something in. I'm going to find that out just simply because I think people that are watching would quite like to know if there's been any statements or responses, which there may well have been, I don't know. So that's worth finding out, isn't it, whether there's been that statement. I mean, just playing devil's advocate, given that they are a competitions and market authority, clearly this bubble economy is what interests them, just due to who they are. So are they best placed to start wondering about the type of treatment given, rather than
no, because they're not vets, and the people who inform them are corrupt vets for the most part. Therefore, they're bound to have bogus ideas that lead them in wrong directions. So no, their whole conception, the whole creation is founded on fallacy, and they're living a lie. They are bureaucrats making work for themselves and dominating the environment according to their lights, according to their misplaced, in my submission, I call it undergraduate economic theory, that really doesn't have any application. And it certainly doesn't have any application to the health and welfare of animals. So you're absolutely right. It can't ultimately, configured in this way, produce a benefit, unless, of course, they use this as a preliminary inquiry to find out just the depth of depravity of this whole veterinary junk pet food, fake animal welfare alliance. If they use it for that purpose and then start to flag to central government all the other issues that need to be resolved, and then that could be the precursor to a wonderful parliamentary inquiry where we do start to get to the bottom of this. And it can be far-ranging and very deep in its dive into distorted markets and the effects of multinational corporations that have corrupted an entire veterinary profession, where UK's 11 veterinary schools are utterly corrupt and defrauding their students by teaching them wrong stuff knowingly. In another sense, in another situation, they, just to give you a for instance, in those veterinary institutions, they'll teach the zoo veterinarians to feed their wolves in the zoo on whole carcasses, but they're modified wolves outside of the zoo enclosure. Siberian huskies could be Siberian wolves. Alaskan Malamutes could be Alaskan wolves, but they're outside of the enclosure, and they say, oh, feed them out of the ultra-processed can or packet. So, we're talking about fundamental corruption here. And the CMA must, I say, it's not optional. They have to take into account that fact and then understand that they're probably out of their depth. They're poorly configured to properly deal with this massive heist, this multi-billion-dollar pet food fraud. And let me make a plug, because I can see over my shoulder there the front cover of my most recent book, Multi-Billion-Dollar Pet Food Fraud. And that's what we need. Oh, splendid. I didn't know you had a copy.
It's a big book. There's a lot going on there.
440 pages. Let me tell you, people, I'm very proud to announce that it was awarded the best of the best book 2023 by the Dog Writers Association of America. So it comes with high recommendation, and that in fact is what we should be talking about here. This massive fraud, the criminality of poisoning all the pets and then pretending to fix them up, whether you're using elaborate systems or massive over-servicing, which is the vet's preference these days, where they commission every test imaginable, when in fact, had they chucked a kilo of chicken wings on the floor, that would have sorted the problem out there and then.
There's a wonderful interview with Tom, actually, that we've got from the last Natural Dog Expo. I'll have to find a way to share that link as well, because you added that to YouTube, didn't you? So for those of you watching thinking, actually, I don't feed raw meaty bones, during that interview, Tom goes into great depth on how you can. So we're not going to talk about that much because that's already been done, but it is entirely possible to do it safely. So definitely have a look at that one. I mean, just again, going back to this, is there a danger here that if we sort of tell the CMA that they're not really looking in the right direction too much, that this could sort of bring down the investigation and the report that they're trying to do, or should we just do it anyway and they'll just
keep chipping away, keep doing it? Transparency, honesty, integrity, have it out in the open. We don't want any hidden secrets. We don't, nature is an open book, but the vets refuse to read from that open book. So we need to keep shoving that open book up the noses of those people who are charged with that responsibility, charged with the responsibility to protect the consumers, protect the citizens of the UK. And of course, that will have a knock-on effect to all other nations in the world. If you get it right here in the UK, then no longer a seat of empire, but nonetheless, it will be recognized and people will relate to that. So that's why this is very, very, very important. And it's not just the cruelty and the consumer fraud, it's the dead hand of the junk pet foods and the vets preventing good, sound scientific discovery to come to the fore, because it's contrary to their interests, so they don't allow it to happen. The cost of this pet food fraud is ginormous, and it's all explained in the 440 pages, no doubt.
I mean, bubble economy or otherwise, in other countries, you don't pay as much for veterinary services. I know that, having lived in a few of them, I know that you don't. So definitely over here, there's a pricing issue as well. But what they're charging you for, really, what I think, you know, we need to be asking is, they're charging you for services, albeit there's going to be accidental that you're going to need support with, a bit like our A&E, if you like. But what they're outside of that charging for, should they be charging it? Could they have not been selling something preventative instead? So I think that's maybe the angle we need to go with here, isn't it?
Well, maybe, but I think persuasion has not worked all these decades that we've been trying to persuade the vets to refocus. So I think actually the CMA needs to have the evidence placed before them. This is massively illegal, and that continuing to prop it up by whatever means is inappropriate, and then to start bringing legal actions, because it's only that, and of course widespread publicity in the media, if we can achieve that too. But
you know what, I think years and years ago, so probably 20 odd years ago, I contacted the Advertising Standards Agency to question why the word complete and balanced was on a packet of pet food, because in my opinion it wasn't complete or balanced. And of course, and at first they got quite excited and sort of ran off to do something, and then they came back to me and said, of course it's because it hits this set of guidelines that means that they're allowed to label with this word. Now we obviously know, you know, and many people watching this know, that there's shortfalls within those guidelines, or at least we believe there is. So I wonder how much of it the CMA are sort of a bit, maybe, Tom, you don't know, there might be people in the CMA who sort of get what you're saying, but they don't know how to go about extending it to that because of these kind of regulations.
Very much so, very much so. And well done you for tackling them on that. But there's a third element to that: complete, balanced, and scientifically formulated. So, and again, that word science frightens them off. They say, well, we're not scientists and we must take advice from the nutritional scientists and the vets and the so on. And so straight away, they're running scared and are not prepared to take on the whole veterinary profession, the might of Mars Corporation, Nestle and Colgate, plus the RSPCA and the People's Dispensary for Sick Animals, and all of these people who are feeding at the trough of the junk pet food poisoning. That is the reality. So they're very powerful interests, and they're going to dress up their comments. The British Veterinary Association has just now published a statement on feeding pets. It is a bogus piece of garbage. Look, it shouldn't be hanging on a lavatory door. It's not even fit for using for toilet paper. It is so appalling.
Yeah, I read the policy. I only read it yesterday, actually. Somebody posted it on my canine nutrition diploma study group. Interesting. Yeah. So I think one of my students posted it up there, and we had a look at it. So of course they've got some papers. There's a couple of papers about the AM2 gene. You've obviously read these, which these
I can't bring myself to read it. I've skimmed it, and it's just so appalling. It's just it's a smokescreen. It's a camouflage for their nefarious activities. Every which way. There's so much in there that you condemn and disparage. But
I wonder if
let's be drawn into it.
Have brought out the policy because of things like the CMA happenings. It's funny they've suddenly brought it out. I don't know.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. With the invasion by the big veterinary groups, there's been a lot of changes, and the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons is very concerned about its situation and its control of the whole thing. The British Veterinary Association, all of them are all galvanized and trying to distort and distract from the central issue. Nowhere will you see raw meaty bones mentioned in any of their publications, never ever. And yet that is the miracle cure and prevention. The miracle cure and prevention that nature is trying to tell us is dismissed as being unsuitable, unsafe. They actually say the best, the safest, most gentle, most efficient medicine is harmful. They completely invert it. So that's the nature of our problem here. So people, for those of you kind enough to have a look at this, please go and have a look at the full written detail about the open letter to the Competition and Markets Authority. And let's make a start. And who knows, people power can make a huge difference here. 2024. Let's see what's happening in 2034, 10 years on, God willing, fingers crossed.
Well, this is it. We've got, as you said, until the 30th. So, yeah, I wasn't aware of the exact date earlier. So, yeah, that's Tuesday, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So let's get this on the internet this afternoon, you and I, Caroline. And terrific. Fingers crossed for all of us and for the pets that so depend on us doing and saying the right thing.
And I think it's important in terms of what we're going to say as guardians, definitely to mention about the treatment side of things, because if you don't know these treatments are available that could support your dog, you don't know to ask for them. So I think that's a really key part of your presentation, because so many guardians don't know of the options. And I went through the same thing, even after all the years I've been involved in this sort of thing, where I took my three-legged dog to the vet. She's getting on a bit now, and they'd said the potted version is, they'd said she'd needed an operation. I didn't obviously want her to have this. And I asked, just to see what the vet would say, I asked if there was any other options that she could have, knowing obviously about things like veterinary acupuncture and that could be supportive to her and her joint pain. And this service is offered within that veterinary practice. And the vet still said, no, I don't know of anything except the painkillers. And I was like, wow. So, things like that, if you don't come to events like the Expo and you don't network and you don't meet people and you don't talk to other people who perhaps feed raw meaty bones already and have completely transformed their dog's health, you don't necessarily know. So I think that's important. Part of your presentation is to say to the CMA, it's all very well saying that the guardian should ask for different treatments, but they need to know. They need to know what's available to ask about it.
For sure.
So that I think it's got to be part of what we're writing. Okay, well, this has been dead interesting, as I thought it would be, and it is, I believe, something we can really do as guardians to make a difference. And as you said, you can potentially send in something after the 30th. I mean, it's not going to be included, surely.
It's up to them. If you present them with compelling evidence, then if they're stupid enough to ignore it, well, that's a great worry. We're paying them. We're paying their salaries. We expect them to perform in an admirable fashion. So people, yeah, don't hesitate. Send in your contributions to the CMA, and of course, talk amongst yourselves and try and create some sort of movement here to bring about the desired end or desired aims for our pets and under our care.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.
Oh.